Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the Halo Forge Epidemic. This is Psychoduck, and I'm here with part 2 of the vehicle balance tutorials. So in part 1 I showed you guys some pointers on how to make good vehicle circuits, and in part 2 I'm going to show you guys how to actually take that vehicle circuit and balance it in with infantry paths and weapons and all that. So I'm going to be looking at 3 maps in this video. The first is Spectre, which is this one, which we just recently featured. And I'm just going to kind of analyze them, show you what's going on. So the circuit I'm not going to talk about so much, but what I am going to talk about so much is how that interacts with the infantry. So down here is an example. You have that long bridge, which is more catered towards infantry. The hogs have to go around it. The infantry get some height advantage. Everywhere on this map you see these piles of crates that provide cover for infantry. Hogs can't really drive through there, but infantry can go through there to get to the power weapons. Now on this map, something you'll notice is that the bases are more geared towards infantry, but then they have to cross this big open expanse to get to the center of the map. Now that open expanse is dangerous for players on foot. And normally you don't want to force everyone on foot to go through a dangerous area like this, but it works pretty well on this map. I just wouldn't recommend trying to do that all the time. Again, there's this more infantry-focused bridge, more of these crates, and back here under the Revenant, you have this more enclosed area for infantry. So something that's important is you'll have kind of paths that are designed basically for vehicles. You'll have paths that are designed basically for infantry, and then you'll have paths that are designed for both. So the ones that are designed for both, it's not going to be the best driving path in the world. It's not quite going to be a natural path like I was talking about in the the first part of this tutorial, but it's going to still work for vehicles, still work for infantry. It's going to have some cover. I'll keep showing you guys examples of this. So here is Port Authority, and an example of a more vehicle path would be off to the right, that road, whereas an infantry path going through this building. So infantry can duck through these buildings to get cover from vehicles, and vehicles have to go around since it takes longer for infantry to walk somewhere, less time for vehicles to drive somewhere. The vehicles have more distance, so you can kind of balance out the time it takes for players to reach certain areas, whether they're on foot or in a vehicle. Now this tunnel is an example of a path that's designed to be used by both infantry and vehicles. Notice it has this little raised up area, that little sidewalk back behind us, which are more for infantry, whereas the center of the tunnel is more for vehicles, but it works for both. This building is again geared towards infantry in the middle of all these vehicle paths. So you never want infantry to be able to just sit in one path or in infantry only areas forever. You want them to have to go out and brave a more vehicle centered area, or else you're just going to get like infantry fights and vehicle fights completely separate. You have to make sure they interact. So here's a little platform which infantry can post up on, but it's very much interactable with vehicles on the map. So, that sort of thing is good to keep in mind. Something else important to think about is what weapons you use. One example is the Spartan Laser, which you definitely don't want more than one of on almost any map. It's very rare you do. Also, if you have a very open map with long sight lines, the Spartan Laser is going to just demolish vehicles just over and over again, and it instantly takes them out of the game. What's better is to have weapons that can disable vehicles or slowly chip away at them instead of instantly getting rid of them. The Spartan Laser can work when the sightlines are restricted enough, though. Now, on the other hand, rocket launchers are good for maps that are more open because, if you put a rocket launcher in an enclosed space, it's going to be a lot more powerful. But because the rockets move slowly and all that, if you start trying to use rockets in longer range, it balances them better against vehicles. The plasma launcher is a bit more difficult to balance, but it works. It's kind of a midpoint between the rockets and the splazer, And this is all talking about ground vehicles, guys. I'm going to talk about heavy vehicles and air vehicles in a later video. But anyways, yeah, so think about the weapons. The sniper rifles, kind of like the laser, except they don't quite instantly take out vehicles. They're still too powerful against vehicles in a lot of situations, though. So here we're looking at S, and what's going on here is, like I showed you in the first tutorial, the vehicles spawn out of the way of the circuit, which is important. And then, you know, you have these cut-throughs, vehicle cut-through, and then to our left is an infantry cut-through. So the vehicle cut-through is an example of something that can be used by both infantry and vehicles, whereas the cut-throughs with the blockers in them can only be used by infantry. This raised up area can only be used by infantry, but for the most part still interacts a lot with vehicles. So that's important. You know, you've got this overlap here, and then to get to the neutral power weapon, though, you have to jump down on foot into an area that can be controlled more by vehicles. So you're risking that because, you know, you're getting the reward of a neutral power weapon. So here, you know, I have a little walk up for infantry to get up out of the vehicle centric area down there. You know, that sort of thing's just important to keep in mind a lot. So yeah, and then these tunnels are infantry only. I talked in the feature video for this map about how infantry and vehicles can cross the map in the same amount of time. That's something that's kind of important to think about. Not necessarily trying to exactly replicate that, but it's definitely good to do. And yeah, so that's kind of the short version on all that. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for part 3.